Meow, this is VRChat. So in this quick tutorial I'm going to show how to add a world constraint prefab to your avatar so you can make it where your avatar will look at a fixed point in space in VRChat and you can place it wherever you want. So in order for this to work, you'll have to download the world constraints prefab from VR Labs. You can find it on their GitHub under world constraint, and if you click on releases on the right side, you can download the uni package. Currently they're on version 1.2, and then once you have it downloaded, you want to bring it into your scene. It's a pretty small package, so it shouldn't take very long to import. So there we go, have imported. Now I want to open up the avatar scene and find where the files are imported. It looks like they're under VR Labs. And you go into World Constraint, and then you want to find this World Constraint prefab. Just plop it into your scene, and then you'll want to right click on it and click Unpack Prefab. This allows us to take it apart and move around how the pieces are parented to the avatar. Then we'll want to take the World Constraint, drop it right onto the avatar so it pops up right at the bottom. And then we'll want to take the reset target and do the same and pull it out. This is why we unpacked it, so we can move around the reset target. And then we'll want to, in this case, I want the reset position where the target for my eyes will reset. I want to reset to my right hand so I can move around my right hand in space, then set and place it wherever my right hand is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down on my armature and find my right hand. The armature will depend on your avatar. Right now I'm using a beta version of the Meownyrn cat. It's an avatar I make, but other avatars should work. So usually it's armature, hips, spine, chest, right shoulder, right upper arm, right lower arm, and then it'll be called right hand or right wrist, depending on how your avatar is named. And you want to take this reset target and just drop it onto the hand. But you can see when you have the up here is the move tool. When you have the move tool selected, you can see that the reset target still stayed at the bottom instead of moving to the hand. So what you'll want to do is, oops, wrong one. I'll make sure you have the reset target selected. And why is that moving? Oh, that's why. Okay, so you want to first turn off the parent constraint while you're doing this, just so you don't get confused. So how this works is the parent constraint gets turned on and off, and that will be how the cube moves back to the reset target. But for right now we don't want to do that, so we'll go ahead and move the reset target up to where the hand is. Just make sure it's roughly centered on where we want it to be. That's about there. So this is where the cube will be when the cube underneath the world constraint container cube. So whenever the cube's whenever the container's parent constraint is turned on and off, the cube will move to where it is. But what we're doing, this cube is a little too big, so I'm just going to scale it down to about 1/10 of where it is. So there we go. So now it's in place. Whenever the constraint is turned on off, the cube will move to where our hand is, and when the constraint is turned off, it'll just sit in the world space. And then we'll want our eyes to look at the cube. So I'm going to go to head, eye, left eye, and I'm going to add a look at constraint. And underneath the sources, I'm going to add a new entry. I'm just going to take that cube. Either the cube or the container should work. Something to note is you don't want to move the cube, just leave at 0, 0, because it's parented to the container and the container's moving around. So either the container or the cube. I just did the cube for convenience. And then when I click activate, it's going to look really wonky, but it's going to make it active, and it's going to check this is active box. And it's hard to see, but the eye did in fact turn and look all the way to the side to where the cube is. So if I move this little target over here, just for demonstration, and I turn back on this constraint, you can see that the cube popped into here, and the eye looks at it. But that's not necessarily what we want to do. So let's see, I'm just gonna undo that and get my target back to where it was, and the container I'm going to parent again, so you can see it snaps back in place. So now we have it on the left eye. We want to make sure it's also on the right eye, so we'll add a look at constraint on the right eye and do the same thing. Add a source, gonna throw in the cube or the container. I think either one should work. Then click activate, and this one you can see a little better that it's in fact looking off to the side, even though it's clipping through, because it's not really meant to, your eyes aren't meant to look 90 degrees to the right. That would be painful. And then on the avatar layer, we want to collect the overall avatar, because we do need to fix one thing. Most avatars will have the eye look turned on. This is a VRChat system for looking around. You could click disable, and I'll disable both the looking around and the blinking. Problem is, you may still want to have your blinking, because if you're looking at the screen or looking somewhere for too long without blinking, it'll look unnatural. So I'm going to leave the eye look enabled, but I'm going to, for the bones, left and right eye, I'm going to click this little dot on the right side, which will bring up a list of all the objects in the scene. I'm just going to go all the way to the top and just click none, and I'm going to remove both the right and the left eye. So there we go. So that finishes the setup for getting the eyes to look at the cube and having the cube where we could turn it on and off. Now we want to add toggles so that we can place the cube in world space, and preferably turn off the mesh render for the cube so we don't have to always have that obstructing our camera or being weird in the world space. So what we want to do, first we're just going to go ahead and add 2 toggle parameters to our parameters. So on the avatar, you want to assign your parameters down here at the bottom under the VRC avatar descriptor. Click it and it'll show you in the folder where your parameters are. So you'll find your parameters. There'll probably be some sort of long list, maybe not this long, of different parameters. Up top you want to click add, click that twice. At the bottom it will have duplicated your last parameter twice, but we want 2 new parameters, so we're going to call it, I'm going to call one cube toggle, and the other one be place toggle. It's important that these parameter names be exact across everywhere it's used, so the capitalization does matter. We'll be using these parameters in the animator as well, and it'll be in the menu for VRChat as well. So we have our 2 new parameters. You want them as bool. It doesn't really matter if they're default on or off, or if they're saved or not. I'll just leave these as default on and saved as well. And then we'll want to do similar for our menu. So we'll want to go to our main expression menu. So you can click here to find it. And we're going to want to add a new submenu to this. So before we go into the main menu, I'm just going to go ahead and create, right click in your folder and create VRChat avatars menu. I'm just going to call it look or something just so I know what it is. And in here I'm going to add 2 new controls. And I'm going to click on the arrow to expand them. First control is going to be the cube visibility, and I'm going to set that to toggle. I'm going to set the parameter to that cube parameter. Here we go. Yeah, the cube toggle. And it'll auto pull that cube toggle from your parameter list if it's on your avatar. Otherwise you'll need to type it in and be exact. Next one is going to be place toggle, and I set the type to toggle as well. And then we're going to go down to the bottom again, and we're going to set it to place toggle. So that's the look menu. And then in the main menu, we're going to want to add a new submenu. So it's very similar to what we were doing last time. You want to hit add control, Hopefully your menu isn't as cluttered as mine. This was my 8th control, so it's the last one I could add. If it's grayed out, that means you have too many menus in here and you only add it to another menu somewhere else. For the name, I'm just going to call it look at. The name doesn't matter. And then I'm going to put submenu. So this allows us to drag and drop that menu we just created and put it in here. And whenever the expression menu is opened up, you can just click on this or move to the look menu and it'll open up this second menu with the 2 new toggles. If you don't have much here, you could just put the 2 toggles in here, but I think this is a little more straightforward. So that's the menus and the parameters set up. Now we'll want to create the animations for having the cube be placeable and not placeable, and the animation for turning off the mesh render on that cube. So we're going to create a total of 4 animations. So right click on your folder, create animation. I'm going to have a place on and a place off, as well as a, I'm just going to call it cube on, and animation cube off. One thing I like to do when I'm creating animations is to put them on the avatar directly. But if you do that on the avatar itself, the one you want to upload, sometimes it can create some weird bugs. Sometimes they're easy to fix, sometimes not. So out of convenience, what I like to do is duplicate my model and hide the original. So if you select the original, just click this checkbox up here on the inspector, turn it off. And on the new one, I want to take those animations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select one, then control select all the others so they're all selected at once. I'm going to drag and drop them onto the avatar, and you'll notice that create a new little animator layer down here that has all of our animations, and it is auto-assigned it to the automatic animator here. If you put it on your main avatar, it'll put in this controller here. The problem is VRChat likes this to be empty, so it can break some things. So that's why I just duplicate it, so I don't have to worry about that. But now we have this dummy avatar with the 4 animations on it. What we want to do is select it, then go to our animation folder. For me, it's down here. If you don't have that, then you want to go to Window, Animation, Animation, and it'll bring up the window for you. And we want to create all 4 of our animations. So we're going to first start off with turning the cube visibility on and off. So since we're looking at the cube itself, we don't want to just turn off the whole game object. That could cause some issues where that game object won't update and your eyes won't know where to look at. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to turn off the mesh renderer. So we're going to go in here, and underneath here there should be this mesh renderer option, and to create the animation you want to first click this record button here. This will record everything you do. If you click off the avatar, it may turn off the record, so be careful. So just make sure this red light is on, make sure the timeline looks red, and then uncheck the mesh renderer, and you see it creates a new keyframe down here with that mesh renderer unchecked on that cube. Something to note is if you ever move the cube around, like you change how it's parented this stuff on your avatar, it may break this animation. Just be careful, because Unity doesn't update the old animation files when you start messing with your avatar. And then out of good habit, it's usually best to have at least 2 keyframes, one on frame 0 here and one on frame 1. If you just have 1 keyframe, sometimes it'll break. So we want it to be, this is the animation for having the cube off. Then we want to do the same for cube on. So we're going to go to cube. This time we're going to turn it off and turn it back on because we want it to be on in this case. And we can Control C to copy it, and then move over to the second frame by clicking up here, and Control V to paste it. So now again we have 2 frames where the cube is on in this case, and last one, if you go back to it, you can see, and scroll through it, you can see it's off. So that's for the cube visibility. So that's all good. And then we'll want to do the placement now. So for this, what I call place off is where it's not stuck in your hand. The cube is just in the world doing wherever it wants to do. So for that, we'll want to go to container, and here we want to find the component for parent constraint. So place off means it's not parented to our hand, so we'll just want to, for this one, we'll want to have the record on and turn this checkbox on and off, or make sure it's off. And now we have the checkbox off for 1 frame, and we'll want to duplicate that by Control C, and then Control V. So we have 0 frame and first frame. Sometimes it will work with just 1 frame, but I don't know, I always get better results with 2. Turn off that record, and I want to do the same thing for the place on, except we want that parent constraint to be turned on. So when this is turned on, that cube will be following our hand and not in with the world space. So we'll Control C and Control V again to have 2 frames. So now we have our animations. So we can go ahead and delete this dummy avatar. He's done his job. You can go back into the void, and we'll turn back on our normal avatar. So for here, we'll now want to put these animations as toggles in our effects layer. The effects layer is used for controlling blend shapes, object toggles, and about everything on the avatar except for rotating a bone. If you want to rotate a bone, you typically want that in gesture. And if you're controlling a humanoid bone, like your arms or your eyes or something where they're set up in the humanoid rig, then you usually want to have that on like the action layer or something. Or additive. They're a little bit funky. Something to note on this avatar, it's probably similar for yours, but the eye bones are assigned in the FBX file as the humanoid eye bones, and this method still works on it. So it'll probably work for your avatar as well if it's not even assigned. If it's assigned or assigned, it doesn't seem to affect it in this case. But for the next part of this, we want to add our toggles to our effects layer. So we'll click on the effects layer to find it. So just select it over here, and then we'll click on it, and then we'll want to go to animator. While this is selected, if the animator doesn't pop up, then you'll go to Window, Animation, Animator. And here will pop up. This is probably the one you're less likely to have by default. So once we're in here, we want to create a new layer. There's a lot of layers here in this avatar. Yours may be shorter or longer. So we're going to create a new layer. It's going to create at the bottom. And nothing's going to really happen. It's created a new layer, but it's all the way at the bottom of the list. And it actually has our keyboard in type mode, but we can't see what we're typing. So I'm just going to type in cube, hit enter or return, and you can see this name up here changed to cube. And if I scroll down, you can see it finished that type mode and changed the name to cube. You could also just hit enter and then come back down here and double click to name it. And very important on this cogwheel, want to turn the weight up to 1, otherwise it'll ignore this new layer that we made. And then we're going to add another layer, do similar things, except we're going to call it place. And we're going to set the weight for that one to 1 as well. So that's on the layers tab. On the parameters, we'll want to add new parameters. It's very similar. We have a long list here, but we're going to create 2 new bools. I'm just going to go ahead and create by hitting this plus and then clicking on bool. Bool is a parameter that can be true or false, so it's just on or off. And it created 2 new bools at the bottom. We're going to call one the exact same thing we had in our parameters earlier. We're going to call it cube toggle, no space in there, like we did with the other one. And we're going to have place toggle with no space, just like the other You can set default on or off here. Doesn't matter too much. VRChat will have its own defaults and the parameter list, so these values don't matter unless they're local. If these are local parameters not controlled by VRChat, then that's that may be important, but for here we want these to be synced in the VRChat menu. So we're going to go back to layers now, and we're going to set up our animations so they transition in. So for the cube, I am going to just put cube on in. So this creates a default transition to here when this is the only animation here. So you have this orange line. It's where it enters from the animation. It goes in here by default. But we don't always want to have the cube visible. So we're going to come in here and also drag and drop the animation for having the cube visibility off. And now we want to make a connection between having the cube on and the cube off. Otherwise it'll just stay stuck here on and it'll never make it over here to this little animation. So what we want to do is select the cube on animation, click on make transition, and it'll give this little thingy that goes all over the screen. We can go wherever we want, though in reality all we can really go to is go back to cube off. So we just want to put that little arrow and select it onto cube off. And then we want to select it, go to settings, and we want to turn off has exit time. Has exit time is sort of just a exit after a certain amount of time. We want to exit this cube on and go to this cube off when a certain condition is met. So let's turn that off. We'll set how long it takes for it to transition to 0, because we just want it to instantly transition to one or the other once we tell it to. And here under conditions, this is the important part, you want to click the plus to add a new parameter. And then from the list of parameters, you want to go all the way to the bottom and select our cube toggle. So in this case, I want false to be when the cube visibility is off. So under here, I'm going to set this cube toggle to false. And then I don't really want to repeat all of this when I make the next toggle to go back to on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here with the transition selected. I'm going to right click and I'm going to click copy transition parameters. So that copies pretty much everything. Not everything, but most everything here. I don't know why it doesn't copy everything. That's annoying. Like it won't copy interruption source sometimes, or can transition itself. It won't copy those two, but it'll copy most stuff here. And then we'll want to make another transition. This time going from cube off to cube on, and we want to make sure we select the correct arrow that's going from off to on. And then we're going to go up here. Instead of hitting copy, we're going to hit paste both. So I'll paste the settings here, most of the settings, and the conditions. So the settings match up. We don't have exit time, we have a transition of 0, but this time we want to have the cube toggle set to true. So when the cube toggle is false, it'll go from this cube on, go through this transition of 0 seconds, and go to cube off. And then when the cube toggle is turned on, it'll go through this transition and go back to on. So this allows us to turn on and off the cube visibility. And I want to do the exact same thing with place. So we're going to take place on, just drop in here, so the default transition's here, and we're going to drop in the off. So we're going to make transition, and we're going to do paste, and instead of having cube toggle, we'll want to set this to place toggle. And once we set the place toggle, something important to know is when you change this parameter, it will change the value over here. So for booleans, it'll always change this back to true. So we want this to be false for when place is off. And then we're going to, again, copy those parameters. And we're going to make a transition back. And we're going to paste both. And we're going to change this place to true. So theoretically, that should be everything. So recap of what we did. We imported that VRC Labs world constraint. We put it into our world, our scene. We unpacked it and we put it on our avatar. So we dragged on the world constraint on top of our very top part of our avatar, and we took that reset target and we put it on our hand, lined it up with the hand, the right hand. If you're left hand, you could do left hand too, it doesn't matter. And we scaled down that default cube so it's a little easier for what we're doing. We set the left and right eyes to have look at constraints that are active to that cube. The container probably works as well, because that, from my understanding, it's just a container that controls everything, just holds the cube. And then for the avatar, we turned off the eyes by removing the eye bones. You could also disable the look as well if you really want to, but that would disable your blinking. And then we added to the parameters, we added these two new bools at the bottom, cube toggle and place toggle. For me, I didn't use any space and they're capitalized words, so that's important. They're set to Boolean, and the parameters, the checkboxes, it doesn't matter if they're checked or not. I just left them all checked for this case. And then for the go back to the avatar. We also updated the the main menu. So for the main menu, we add a new submenu, and that submenu down here has the toggle. Set the toggle for cube toggle, and toggle set for place toggle. These are just names to help you know what you're pressing on. And then we did the last thing, which was create 4 animations for having the constraint on the container turned on and off, this checkbox here, as well as 2 animations for turning the mesh render checkbox here on and off. So, those 4 animations, and then we added them to the avatar's effects layer. So we went to the animator, we added 2 parameters, bool parameters down here. These checkboxes don't matter, just need to be bools that with the names exactly matching that setup earlier. And then we added 2 new layers and made sure their weights were set to 1. And we add those animations with transitions that go back and forth using the parameter toggles. So that's a quick recap. Also make sure I didn't miss anything, so I don't have to record this again. So once you're done, you'll probably want to go ahead and click save. You can go to File, Save, or Control S. Make sure your scene's all saved. And yeah, should be ready. Important to know is you probably want to have duplicate your scenes and everything before you start. Just make backups of your project like normal. This isn't too big of a project or change to your folder, but I always recommend creating backups. And we can go ahead and upload to VRChat using the VRC control menu. This may potentially change a little bit if you're using the companion app. I haven't used it yet. I'm just still using the old SDK. I don't know how that changes this, but go ahead and build it. If you want to create a new upload, you can deattach the pipeline before you click upload or build and publish. I'm just going to do a build and test. That just creates a local copy, so your friends won't be able to see it, but if you're running off your PC, then should be just fine for testing it locally. So it's going to take a little bit, just uploading all the different shaders and things, or not uploading, but packaging them for the avatar. There we go. And now the avatar is ready for testing. If you're building there, go through the normal building thing where it tabs over to the game tab and you can name it and everything and upload it. So hopefully this helps. So yeah, I've been FrostKittyPa, and this is a quick tutorial on how to set up a little toggle for moving around your eye look in the world space. Anyways, bye bye, yeah!